I work as a treasure hunter in a haunted forest. My 4 rules to survive the cursed spirits. I never should have opened that door. The creak echoed in the stillness of the old cabin, as if the house itself was warning me to turn back. My heart raced. I had been treasure hunting most of my life, chasing legends and lost riches, but this was different. The forest surrounding the cabin was thick and menacing. Tree branches clawed at the sky like skeletal fingers. The air was cold, biting, wrapping around me like a shroud. It smelled of damp earth and decay. I could hear whispers, faint and eerie, as if the spirits of those who had come before me were urging me to leave. Shadows danced between the trunks, flickering just beyond my line of sight. That morning had been ordinary enough. I packed my gear, reviewed old maps, fueled by dreams of discovery. But now, standing at the door, I felt a presence, a weight that pressed against my chest. A warning scream, or was it laughter? The very thought made me shiver. Objects shifted behind me. A chill ran down my spine. I could almost hear the snicker of a ghostly figure, mocking my bravado. I pushed the door open. Darkness swallowed me whole. I took a tentative step inside, the floorboards creaking beneath my feet, groaning like a living thing. Cold air rushed in, carrying the scent of something ancient, something I couldn't name. I held my breath, straining to hear over the pounding of my heart. Was that a shuffle? A sigh? What was once the thrill of adventure turned to dread. I could feel eyes watching from the corners. My hands trembled, clenching the flashlight like a lifeline. The beam danced across the walls, revealing faded photographs of people whose eyes seemed to follow me, their faces twisted in expressions of fear. Every noise felt amplified, the creaking of the cabin, the rustling outside. My mind raced through all the tales of lost souls trapped in this very forest, their cries echoing through time. I reminded myself of the 4 rules I'd lived by. Respect the spirits. Stay quiet. Don't wander off. Most importantly, leave before dark. The wind howled outside, carrying a voice that echoed in the corners of my mind. My time was running out. Suddenly, the shadows shifted again, thicker this time. I could sense a figure, lurking just beyond the reach of my flashlight. I took a step back, my throat dry, trying to suppress the scream that threatened to escape. Was it my imagination, or were the walls closing in around me? Then it happened. A loud bang echoed from behind me. The door slammed shut, cutting off my only escape. My heart stopped. There was something here with me. I felt the air grow colder, a whisper brushed against my ear. Get out, hey. Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The darkness seemed to pulse, resolute and alive. I inhaled deeply, trying to quell the rising tide of panic, but the scent of mildew mixed with something sweetly rancid filled my lungs. The whispered voice was relentless now. Get out, it repeated, more insistent, more desperate. It felt less like a warning and more like a command, an echo of the forest's many lost souls. Now trapped here with me, I turned slowly, searching for the source of the sound. My flashlight beam quivered, revealing glimpses of chipped walls, ragged wallpaper peeling away like memories. As I cast my light toward the corner, I saw something move. Something small flitted just outside the perimeter of my vision. When I focused, it vanished, leaving behind a sense of dread that thickened the air. I took a cautious step forward and heard the moan of the floorboards beneath me. Each creak felt like a voice rising in protest. You don't belong here, it seemed to croon, and I wrestled with the urge to flee. But I couldn't leave now. Not when treasure hunted for centuries might finally be within my grasp. I steadied myself. My fingers brushed against something cold and metallic on the floor. I bent down, my breath hitching when I found an old key, the kind that had long lost its lock. Why was it here? I slipped it into my pocket, a flicker of hope igniting amidst the suffocating dread. The door, however, loomed like an insurmountable barrier. I knew I had to find another way out. As I turned, a tremor ran through the cabin, rattling the walls and causing debris to rain down around me. Panic surged. I needed to leave before whatever haunted this place decided I was its next prey. I darted through the room, my flashlight illuminating the haunting photographs lining the walls. They were more than just images. They were portraits of despair. Each person bore a look of profound sadness or terror, almost as if they were aware of the fate that awaited any who stepped inside. I shivered and avoided their gaze, fighting against the urge to look back. Suddenly, the air shifted. A palpable chill surrounded me, and the whispers grew chaotic, like a storm of voices shrieking in agony. I pressed my hands against my ears, but their cries cut through me, filling my mind with chaos. "Help us!" One voice pleaded, breaking through the cacophony, and a vision flashed before my eyes: children in ragged clothes, lost and wandering the forest, their faces smeared with dirt, eyes wide and pleading. Unnerved, I stumbled backward into something soft, cold, yet fleshy. My scream caught in my throat as I spun around, expecting to find an empty space. Instead, I stood face to face with a figure draped in tattered rags, its hair wild and matted. The spirit gazed at me with hollow eyes, and a grim smile adorned its mouth, revealing jagged teeth. "Join us," it rasped, its voice like rusted metal scraping against stone. I stared in horror as the figure extended its hand, beckoning me to step closer. Agony radiated off it, a deep-rooted pain that clawed at my heart with a paralyzing grip. I turned, bolting past the figure, fueled by fear. In my frenzy, I scrambled toward the back of the cabin and noticed the window a slim chance of escape. As I flung it open, a chill wind rushed in, swirling around me like the memories of the dead. I climbed up on the ledge but hesitated, the very night air whispering new warnings to me. Then, as if summoned by my doubt, the spirit appeared beside the window, its face a haunting mask of despair. "You cannot leave," it hissed in a voice that felt like sandpaper on my skin. "You belong to the forest now." The words echoed in my mind as I felt the ground tremble beneath me, the forest beyond erupting with the fury of 1,000 unseen presences. Suddenly, the voices crescendoed, an unbearable scream that rattled my bones, and the world twisted into a blur of darkness. Just as I was about to leap, the entire cabin shuddered violently, sending me staggering back. I lost my grip on the window, and the ground gave way beneath me. I fell, weightless, into an abyss of shadows. The last thing I heard was laughter, dark, mocking laughter that echoed around me, ringing in my ears even as my consciousness faded. Then silence thick and oppressive consumed the darkness. The silence faded into an unsettling stillness, wrapping around me like a shroud as I regained consciousness. I was sprawled on a cold, damp surface, disoriented. Slowly, I pushed myself up, blinking against the darkness that enveloped me. The oppressive chill had returned, biting at my skin with every breath I took. This was no longer the cabin. I could sense that much through the weight of despair that loomed around me. The air felt thicker here, suffused with an otherworldly energy that pressed down on my chest. I strained my ears, listening carefully for any sign of the malevolent presence that had pursued me. A low, mournful sound echoed through the void, like the sorrowful cries of lost souls drifting through the ether. "Get out," the voice whispered again, more desperate than before, a haunting plea layered with urgency. As I rose fully to my feet, my fingers brushed against the rough stone wall to steady myself. The ground below felt uneven and slippery, and I took small, cautious steps, my flashlight sputtering in the darkness. Each flicker of the light revealed grotesque shadows that twisted and morphed, darting just past the edge of my vision, taunting me with their evasiveness. "Where am I?" I murmured to myself, the sound of my own voice oddly hollow here. My heart raced as I remembered the relentless spirit at the window, the shudder of my surroundings as I fell. Had I been taken somewhere deeper? With every step, the dread wrapped tighter around me. I began to hear whispers emanating from all around, a maddening blend of words that gnawed at my sanity. "Find us, save us," they implored, weaving a tapestry of anguish that snared my heart. I felt not just fear, but a weight of responsibility pressing down on me. Could I really save these tormented souls? The path ahead sloped downward, and I had no choice but to follow it. compelled by an unnatural force that coaxed me deeper into the darkness. I switched off my flashlight, opting instead to let the whispers guide me. As I stepped gingerly ahead, I noticed shapes emerging from the shadows, figures that mirrored the ragged children from my vision. They flickered into existence, fading as soon as I focused on them. "Help us, please," one child's ethereal form whispered, its tiny face smeared with grime, eyes wide with fear and longing. I couldn't help but reach out, fingers almost brushing the figure. It vanished like smoke, leaving me gasping in the suffocating gloom. I stumbled farther, a frantic urgency driving every move. The path twisted, and I came upon a cavern. The air thickened with a noxious odor, part decay, part desolation. Flickering phosphorescence glowed from the walls, revealing grotesque markings, like claw marks embedded in the stone, each telling a story of a struggle against unseen terrors. Suddenly, the whispers crescendoed into a chorus of wails, nearly deafening. At the center of the cavern stood an altar covered in dirt and debris, ancient and unyielding, with a strange luminescent artifact resting upon it. A heart-pounding dread filled me as the object pulsed faintly, as though it were alive, a small, shimmering amulet that seemed to call to me, its light captivating and terrifying all at once. "Touch it," the voices urged in unison, their desperation palpable. "It's the key." I hesitated, battling the unknown forces pulling me toward the altar. The air crackled with unnatural energy, and a wave of foreboding washed over me. I sensed a shifting presence crawling upon my skin, a living darkness lurking just beyond the edge of the light, waiting for me to succumb. Just as I stepped toward the altar, a deafening roar erupted from the shadows, exploding with ferocity. The cavern trembled violently, and the whispers morphed into a horrifying cacophony of rage. "Run!" something shouted, shrill and commanding. I pivoted on instinct, sprinting back the way I came, but the ground beneath me heaved violently. The darkness swelled, spilling forth tangible tendrils, reaching out, yearning to ensnare me. The figures of the lost began to emerge again, their mouths flapping open in silent screams that echoed through the chaos, their hands clawing at the air, begging me to stay. I turned back, horrified at the altar glowing with an ominous light as the cavern walls began to close in. The shadows writhed against the walls, forming an insatiable force, tearing at the seams of my very sanity. And then, as I prepared to leap into the unknown, I heard Ida bone-chilling laughter, rich with malice behind me, mixing indistinguishably with the cries of the lost. "Welcome home," it rasped, the voice wrapping around me like a binding chain. I hesitated for a split second, just long enough for the darkness to envelop me once more. I clawed at the darkness wrapping around me, each brush of cold tendrils against my skin igniting the primal instinct to flee. But where could I run? The very air I gasped for felt heavy with doom. It constricted my throat, choking out any scream. The malicious laughter echoed, reverberating off the stone walls, twisting into a symphony that was both intoxicating and dreadful. The darkness surged forward, a wave of despair flooding over me, and my pulse quickened as dread tightened its grip. As the shadows thickened, an image flickered in my mind, a remnant of my past that had always felt just out of reach. I saw myself as a child, crouched in my bedroom, covering my ears against the thunderous storm outside. If I had ignored the whispers then, would I have escaped this malevolence? No answer would come, only the haunting reminder that I had ignored warnings before. "Find us, save us," the voices pleaded again, but sharper, more accusatory. The figures darted in and out of the shadows, two of them now, their eyes bright with imploring innocence, urging me to take action. Yet they distorted, shifting between despair and rage, as if reflecting the turmoil within me. I felt a split between wanting to help them and needing to escape. "Touch the amulet," they hissed in unison, their words caressing my mind, sweet like a deceptive lullaby. The altar pulsed in response, a beacon of light steadily flickering, drawing me closer even as I fought against it. I swayed, torn between the childlike trust in their promises and the dark instinct screaming to flee. As I hesitated, the shadows lunged forward with a sudden ferocity, thrumming with life. They brushed against my skin like spider silk, icy and electrifying all at once. I stumbled back, my foot slipping on the slick ground, and I landed hard on the damp stones. The breath knocked from my lungs. Suddenly, the cries of those lost souls shifted from pleading to enraged screams. The darkness morphed then, twisting and warping with an insatiable hunger, and I felt claws scraping against the back of my mind, urging me to give into despair. Their cries turned into agonized howls, melding into the laughter around me, taunting me, mocking my faltering resolve. Open your heart. The shadows beckoned, slithering ever closer. I could almost see them forming into a cloud of faces, each with mouths wide in a silent scream, their features twisted and bereft of hope. This was not a fight against mere darkness, it was against every ounce of suffering that had ever been inflicted on this wretched place. Panic surged, flooding my chest until it threatened to explode. I lurched to my feet, darting toward the cavern's entrance, but my way was cut off. A wall of gloom surged upwards, blocking escape, skeletal hands reaching from its depths, caressing my ankles, dragging me backward, and with them, the fading forms of the children pleading with me, their eyes clouded with despair. In a moment of adrenaline, I seized a jagged rock from the ground and smashed it against the nearest shadow. The being howled, an echoing shriek that made the walls tremble. But with my action, I had awakened something far worse. The laughter morphed into a low growl that rattled the very stones around me. Welcome home. The voice slithered closer, teasing and sinister, a mocking promise that sent chills raking down my spine. The shadows rippled in response, warping into surreal forms that contorted like reflections in a funhouse mirror. But these weren't just shadows. They were memories, echoes of a hidden past fused with the spirits trapped within. Join us, they murmured, swirling closer, the bitter scent of desperation filling my lungs too thick, too suffocating. I felt the air grow colder, my limbs growing heavy. I couldn't breathe. Every gasp stung, the atmosphere thickening with despair. As weight pressed down on my soul, as the ground shook violently beneath my feet, I spotted movement just behind the altar. A figure, cloaked in the darkness, loomed shapeless and massive, cloaked in shadows. And then, with a sudden clarity unlike before, I recognized the figure I had glimpsed in my nightmares, its empty gaze fixed upon me, eyes like voids sucking in all light. It began to move forward, a grotesque amalgamation of tormented faces swirling within its form, each one a memory of a lost soul who had once lived. That I scrambled back, fear igniting every nerve. But there was no escaping the hellish maze I had entered, no breaking free from the growing malevolence that engulfed the chamber. With one last desperate dart toward the amulet, I stretched out my hand, knowing it was a gamble. The fate of my very soul lay within that trembling light. But just as I was about to grasp it, the ground erupted beneath me, fissures spreading like a spiderweb of destruction, and the howling souls surged forth, their cries mingling with the sinister laughter of the figure behind me. The darkness consumed everything. A voice that was both theirs and something else altogether whispered darkly, "You should have stayed away." And just before I was swallowed by the abyss, I caught one last glimpse of the spectral faces, each now twisted in horror as the figure drew closer, its hand reaching out for me, ready to pull me into the depths of despair. The world around me shattered into pieces, and I realized with perfect clarity this was no longer just a nightmare. It was the beginning of my torment. When the shards of reality reformed, I found myself standing in a landscape warped by shadow. The cavern had vanished. Instead, a dense forest loomed before me, its branches clawing at the night sky like the fingers of a dying hand. An unsettling wind whispered through the trees, an eerie shiver that raised the hairs on the back of my neck. I was back, but it was different, heavier, infused with an oppressive darkness that seeped into every crevice of my being. Panic surged again, but I knew I couldn't linger in this limbo. I had to move. Still, dread rooted me in place. I could almost hear their voices, echoing faintly through the thickening fog around me. Those pale, pleading children calling out in harmony with the haunting rustle of distant branches. I forced myself to step forward, each crunch of leaves and twigs piercing the silence, announcing my presence to whatever unseen horrors lurked between the trees. The forest felt sentient, alive with a malevolence that seemed to wrap around me like a rotting shroud. The air hummed with the promise of omnipresent eyes, each darting from behind the gnarled trunks, watching my every movement. Were they the souls of the lost, the ones my dreams had foreshadowed, or was this merely the manifestation of my growing terror? I pressed deeper, the darkness closing in like a trap, swallowing the last of the twilight. Every shadow twisted at the corners of my vision, forming grotesque shapes I dared not examine fully, as if the trees themselves were warning me to turn back. But I had chased my fear too far. Turning back now felt like admitting defeat. Remember, a voice breathed into the wind, whispering through the trees. My heart skipped. I recognized the baleful tones that had called to me through the shadows. Find us, save us. The chant pulsed with urgency that I rushed forward, following the almost instinctual draw towards the sound. It felt like I was plummeting into a deeper abyss, every branch that snagged my clothing or hair a reminder of the clawing darkness that sought to pull me back. And then, just as I thought all hope was lost, I stumbled upon a clearing bathed in ghostly moonlight. At the center stood an ancient well, its stones crumbled and cracked, bearing the telltale signs of age and abandonment. The air around it shimmered with dread. From its depths, a hollow echo came for the hollow, unearthly voice that resonated through the very marrow of my bones. The aura held a terrifying allure, coaxing me closer with another plea. Help us! I teetered at the edge, peering down into the abyss. Whatever lay there was shrouded in darkness, but I felt the pull of curiosity, driving curiosity. As I leaned closer, the well's surface flickered with images, children in a forest, laughter that turned to screams, faces twisted in eternal agony. Their timelines stretched across eternity, each scene morphing like the grotesque shadows I had just fled. Suddenly, I heard movement behind Maya rustle too loud to ignore. I turned, heart racing, and faced the thick shadows creeping from the edge of the trees. Shapes lumbered forward, forming into indistinct figures that danced on the cusp of vision. Hollow eyes reflected a hunger that sent chills coursing through my body. And then, among them, I saw a familiar facet. Was the child from my visions, the one who had begged for help. But there was something wrong. The child's eyes, once filled with innocence, were now hollow and void. They were no longer pleading. Instead, they were accusing. You waited too long. The child shrieked, the voice rising above the others, shrill and echoing with fury. The gnarled hands of the figures reached out, grasping together, forming an unholy chorus that reverberated through the clearing. You could have saved us. You brought us here. Panic clawed at my throat. I stumbled back toward the well, but the shadows advanced, a wave of darkness crashing against the fragile veil of reality. I felt a sudden draft, cold and biting, as though the forest breathed in synchrony with their desperation. Desperation ignited a primal instinct within me. I turned, intent on fleeing, when the ground shook violently beneath me, fissures spider-webbing from the well, drawing energy from the past's malevolence. With a final breath of courage, I lunged toward the well's edge, my hands gripping the cracked stones as I peered into the abyss. It had transformed into an endless whirlpool, alive and pulsating with the souls of the damned. But as my fingers dug into the damp earth, the noise crescendoed around me, and the lunging darkness engulfed me from all sides, claws tearing at my clothing, desperate to drag me down into the pit of despair that had consumed so many before. And just before the shadows ripped me from reality, I glimpsed the child again, hovering near the edge of the darkness, weeping silently. They pointed with a trembling finger, and the ground opened wider, unleashing a cacophony of anguished cries that shattered the night. Then I felt it, cold and comforting, a hand clasping my wrist, not from the darkness, but from the surface. I glanced up, heart on fire with hope, only to find it was not the child pulling me back. No, it was the figure from my nightmares, lurking just beyond the point of light, its gaze fixed, primal and intense, as it grinned a toothy grin that sliced through the air. The earth beneath me heaved, and as I gasped for breath, I realized there was no escape. I was bound to their curse. I had been the one to summon them, and now the shattering darkness was finally free to consume me whole. The grip tightened, unyielding and ice-cold, as the figure leaned closer, revealing the contours of a face I recognized but dared not name. The resemblance to the child was uncanny, yet its skin shimmered like moonlight on a grave, its eyes burning with an ancient knowledge. They were not the innocent eyes I had hoped for. Instead, they were imbued with madness, a reflection of all the despair I had caused. Why do you resist? It spoke, the voice echoing in an otherworldly cadence that twisted around my mind. You long for truth, yet you shun the consequence. The shadows howled, and the ground rumbled violently beneath us as if the earth itself were rending in protest. Pulled between two forces, I felt the pull of the abyss weaken momentarily, but the dread encroaching from all sides threatened to consume me. The figures shifted in the periphery, drawn to the chaos like moths to a flame, their desires palpable, and their cries shrieking with a wail that clawed beneath my skin. My pulse quickened, each heartbeat a drumroll to my demise. Save them, I shouted, desperation laced in my voice as I pointed toward the well's cavernous mouth, even as my instincts screamed for me to flee. They are trapped. The creature's smile widened, almost too wide, pulling its skin taut. They are the price of your salvation, it whispered, its breath rank with the scent of grave soil. The shadows jerked and convulsed at its words, understanding dawning in their hollow eyes. It was their fate I had beckoned forth through my neglect, the void that had awaited my arrival. With a sudden intensity, the specter pulled me up from the edge of the well, wrenching me from the maw of darkness. But the pull was unmistakably stronger than gravity itself. The figures surged forward, hands outstretched, fingers clawing at the air, desperate to drag me back to the very horror I had envisioned. That I thrashed, struggling against the entity's grip. Let them go, I pleaded, a primal scream shattering my composure. You can't hold them any longer. The creature's stare bore into my soul, a predator reveling in the hunt. They are not what you think, it hissed, its visage blurring for an instant into something much older, much viler. The shadows closed in even more, an encroaching tide of anguish on instinct. I shoved my free hand toward the well, desperate to find the child's spirit hidden within that swirling abyss. I could sense that something vital lay within its depths, something that whispered of hope, of clarity, even amidst the horror. If the children wandered this cursed forest, surely their way back was entwined with its dark past. Show me, I cried, and as I focused, the voices of the lost children surged within me. They sang a disjointed melody, weaving tales of sorrow and darkness, but there was an undercurrent of hope. Their strength fueled my determination, and power surged through my limbs as I broke free from the specter's grasp. Surrounded by fleeting shadows, I leaped toward the well, arms outstretched, as the dark tendrils snared at my legs in a desperate bid to reclaim their own. I plunged my hand into the depths. The cold water enveloped me like a coffin, and I was submerged in the chaos of their memories. Flickering like a dying ember, I caught glimpses of their faces, their laughter turning to screams, their small forms lost within the void of the forest. In that swirling darkness, I felt their pain, their terror, and most horrifyingly, their anger. I mouthed words of remorse, begging for forgiveness, for understanding as the water rushed around me. But it only deepened the shadows surrounding me with each second. Then came a feeling, piercing and electric. A surge of strength emanated from the depths, merging with my essence, igniting my spirit where despair had thrived. With a final push of will, I closed my eyes and whispered the incantation I had discovered in a forgotten text, urging the well to yield up its secrets and to release the lost ones from their torment. Please, I beg the abyss, release the children. The well roared in return, echoing with hundreds of voices. And then, like a dam breaking, the shadows flared and screamed, struggling against an unseen force. The ground trembled violently, and for the briefest moment, clarity pierced through the cacophony of anguish. From the depths, I saw a flickering light, a fragile beacon of hope breaking through the endless dark, illuminating the faces of the lost, their eyes wide with a mixture of terror and longing. But before I could reach out, the shadowy figure lunged, its howl a crescendo of rage that clawed at my sanity. Just then, the ground beneath me fractured, yawning wide as the shadows pulled closer. The light began to dim, flickering, then extinguishing in an instant. All hope extinguished with it. As I was engulfed in darkness, the last thing I heard was the chilling laughter of the creature beside. Mado, you think they can be saved? Seams of reality yawned open at my feet, pulling me toward an inescapable fate, and then it whispered, a final curse that echoed into eternity. You will always belong to us. With that, I fell into the void, unknowing of what awaited me in the chasms of despair and if I would ever again rise into the light. The air thickened around me, filled with a palpable dread that echoed my own heartbeat, a rapid tattoo that synced with the pulsating darkness. I could feel fingers of shadow curling around me as I tumbled deeper into whatever nightmare awaited, a violent whirlpool dragging me away from hope. Just as I thought I would drown in the suffocating abyss, I felt something change. Instead of the cold grip of despair, I sensed the presence of more other souls, swirling around like autumn leaves caught in a tempest. They were lost, yet they were alive in a way that felt wrong, flickering at the edges of my consciousness in tortured flashes. Their cries, an unnerving symphony of despair, filled my mind, almost drowning out my own thoughts. Help us, they whispered, voices intertwining in a haunting cacophony. The sensation of so many spirits brushed against my skin, and I shuddered at the cold they exuded. Drawing upon whatever strength I could muster, I clawed desperately through the dark, reaching for names, memories, traces of the children I had chased, of the innocent souls still trapped within this realm. I screamed their names into the void, waiting for a responsive flicker of light, a wisp of recognition. Then, a flicker caught my eye amidst the swirling shadows. A figure emerged from the darkness, pale and glimmering as though sculpted from frost. It wore the face of one of the children I had seen before, a girl with hollow cheeks and wild hair, her wide eyes filled with sorrow. Yet there was something more unsettling beneath the surface, a depth of knowledge far beyond her years, a knowing that sent chills racing down my spine. "Why are you here?" she whispered, her voice fragile yet insistent. "I am trying to save you," I replied, my tone wavering as despair clawed at my throat. "I didn't mean Toyo can't save us," she interrupted, her voice scaling into a chilling crescendo. "We are the echoes of our mistakes. We are bound to the forest just as you are. Your sins brought us here. The shadows they love our suffering." The deeper I waded into this darkness, the more I felt my mind unraveling. Around me, the shadows encroached, pulsating with malice and the weight of their hunger, each dark entity an extension of my own guilt and grief. I wanted to reach out and cradle her, to soothe the child trapped in despair, but my limbs felt weighted, shackled by unseen chains. "Help us!" A chorus of voices enveloped me once more, sending shivers of recognition through my body, each voice echoing the pleas of every lost child imprisoned in this nightmare. "Find the heart of the forest. Find the Wellkeeper." "What's the Wellkeeper?" I cried, the shadows growing restless. Her eyes shifted quickly, darting toward the writhing shadows, and she whispered, "He is the key, but more than the key, he is the keeper of memories. Find him and confront your past before it consumes you." As her words resonated within me, the shadows shifted violently, as though enraged by the mention of this enigmatic figure. I felt the cold touch of the dark entities gripping my body, pulling me down, threatening to silence me forever. "No!" I cried, fighting against the grasp of the tendrils that sought to drag me deeper into the depths of the void. In my panic, I turned away from the child. "I will find the Wellkeeper. I will free you all." The last echo of her voice mingled with the howling tempest of shadows, growing fainter as I surged against their relentless pull. "You can't escape," they bellowed in a chorus of suffering, clenching tightly around my throat. My resolve solidified. I searched the dark with a desperation maddened by dread, desperate to find an exit, but the shadows twisted and transformed, morphing into grotesque shapes that bore the faces of my deepest regrets. Each one screamed tales of betrayal, heartbreak, and negligence, each visage a reminder of the fates I had irrevocably altered. Just as I began to feel the stirring of hope, thoughts of the Wellkeeper, a blinding light erupted before me, illuminating the dark and revealing the ghastly forms of the children I sought to save. Their faces twisted in pain and agony, extending gnarled hands towards me, each an embodiment of my guilt. "I can't let you hold me back," I shouted, pushing through the grasping shadows with sheer will. And then I realized, within that blinding burst of light, stood a figure, slightly obscured by the swirling malevolence. His outline shimmered with a celestial glow, the Wellkeeper, reigning supreme amidst the chaos. With a heart-stopping panic, I lunged forward, but the shadows snarled and lunged back, clawing at my visage. "Stop! You must witness," he boomed in a voice that shattered the fabric of despair. But as I stumbled towards him, the darkness roared, and I felt a tearing at my very essence, a rending of spirit that was both liberating and terrifying. "You can't save them," the shadows shrieked in unison. "They were never yours to save." My heart dropped as I felt the chilling rush of realization. I could either remain doomed in this void of guilt, or cut the tether binding me to their suffering. But as I stood at that precipice of choice, the figure of the Wellkeeper flickered, his face transforming into one I recognized, the child that once had been lost to me. Anguish reflected back at me in a cruel void. In the swirling dance of light and grief, I was forced to choose. Stand with the glow of the Wellkeeper, or plunge deeper into the shadows with the lost, maybe to save them. Or maybe to become just another echo in this damned forest. And then, with a deafening silence, I felt a forceful thrust from behind. Something dark surged forward, threatening to engulf me as I made my choice. I reached for the Wellkeeper with every ounce of my being just as an inescapable scream erupted from the depths below, drowning even the Wellkeeper's voiced no. And in the next terrifying moment, the ground beneath me split open as the darkness surged, channeling through the rift and swallowing me whole, leaving me to question if I'd made the right choice. Was it an end or merely the beginning? The falling darkness engulfed me, a churning void that morphed into a labyrinth of despair. I felt the weight of shadows pinning me down, the cries of the lost swirling around me like a relentless tempest, squeezing the breath from my lungs. "You think you can escape?" they taunted with voices that echoed my own fears. With a scream clawing at my throat, I fought against the dark, trying to push back the suffocating dread that seeped into my bones. Guilt twisted in my gut like a knife, reminding me of every wrong decision, every moment I had turned my back on those in need, especially the children whose eyes now haunted my memory. I had chosen the wrong path, and the forest's malevolence fed on my shame. Suddenly, the shadows around me gave way to a flicker of dim light, forming an ethereal pathway. I gave in to the strange pull, drawn towards the flickering luminescence, desperate for any semblance of hope. As I stumbled forward, the whispers grew louder, their warnings discordant yet tantalizing. "Turn back. You don't belong." Ignoring their cries, I moved deeper into the glow, the soft light illuminating twisted roots and gnarled branches like fingers clawing towards the dark sky. The air was thick, laced with the acrid scent of decay and begging for release, as if the forest itself was aware of my journey. It felt alive, a sentient being sown from the sorrow of the lost. As the path spiraled upward, I glimpsed fleeting figures darting amongst the trees, ghostly apparitions resembling the children who had once roamed these woods. Their laughter echoed, hauntingly joyful, contrasting sharply with the palpable tension that crackled in the air. But just as quickly, they faded, replaced by the oppressive silence of the forest, their spirits lost between joy and grief. "Help us," a voice drifted on the wind, and I froze. There, just within reach, lingered a flickering shadow, an apparition wrapped in childlike innocence. The face was familiar, an echo from my past, one of the children I believed I could save. Her eyes, dark pools of yearning, held my gaze, steadied by a sadness deeper than the abyss surrounding us. "Why won't you tell me how to find the Wellkeeper?" I pleaded, desperation twisting my voice. "He can set you free." The child's expression twisted, a mask of sorrow and pity. "The Wellkeeper feeds on secrets. Every story he collects binds us here. You must choose your truth wisely." The shadows around me stirred at her words, restless and agitated. "Lies, lies, lies," they hissed, their voices merging into a chilling symphony. I felt their presence closing in, the darker aspects of my soul rising like bile, threatening to overtake everything I had left of my resolve. "I have no secrets," I shouted, but even as the words left my mouth, doubt seeped in like poison. I had hidden too much from myself, buried truths that weighed like stones in my heart. The memories of failure rushed back, screaming to be acknowledged, manifesting as weighted silhouettes circling me. You already know the truth, the child said softly, her voice a mere whisper over the din of shadows. To save us, you must confront him. To confront him, you must remember what you chose to forget. With that, the ambient glow flickered violently, illuminating a struggled visage in the shadows. I clutched my head, images flooding in, faces of regret, cries of betrayal, moments where I had looked away while others needed me most. Each face bore a story, each memory a price I had yet to pay. Then, the shadows surged, their figure twisting grotesquely into an amalgamation of every child I had failed. You owe us, they snarled, faces melting into one another, their eyes hollow and accusing. We will never let you go. With a deafening roar, they lunged at me, their hands grasping for my throat, forcing me back into the darkness. I stumbled across the uneven ground, heart racing as I fought against them, driven by the urgency of the child's words. With strength born from desperation, I recalled a fleeting memory I had buried deep, a moment where I had turned away from a child's tear-streaked face, choosing convenience over compassion. It was a simple action, yet it held the weight of my choosing off, leaving someone to succumb in silence. I opened up the depths of that painful memory. The shadows recoiled for an instant, screeching in a symphony of rage and pain. No, you cannot see. But I refused to close my eyes. Stripped of my defense, I charged forward into the glowing pathway, refusing to allow the darkness to consume me. I had to face this past. I had to find the Wellkeeper within its depths. Just as I felt the warmth of the light wrap around me again, the ground trembled violently, and a fissure opened, a yawning maw that pulsed with the essence of tangled memories. From within, a sound emerged, heavy, deliberate breaths mixed with whispering echoes, drawing me closer. I could feel the weight of the forest's history leaching into my soul. Suddenly, from the depths of the crack, a disembodied voice resonated, low and rumbling. You dare confront the burden of your past? Come forward, seeker. And as I teetered on the edge, hanging between the realm of darkness and the promise of light, the voice whispered with a sickly sweet allure, what secrets will you unearth to set them free? Then, just as I reached out to grasp the light, shadows erupted around me, dragging me back, and I was left teetering at the edge of that dreadful void between salvation and eternal damnation. The moment I anchored my foot on the trembling edge, the oppressive darkness surged, wrapping around my ankle like cold steel. The shadows hissed, their voices rising in a deafening crescendo, drowning my thoughts, drowning my will. The fissure below blossomed like a dark flower, pulsating with the heartbeat of an ancient malice that thrummed in harmony with my rising terror. Do you think you can choose? The voice echoed, layering over itself, each repetition growing sharper, more menacing. Choices made in ignorance bear the weight of 1,000 regrets. Fighting against the pull, I felt the very essence of pain and suffering seeping into my being, memories long buried clawing up through the fissuria, forced choice becoming a harrowing dance. Gasping, I held my head, struggling to keep hold of my sanity. I had come too far to be swallowed whole by this deceitful void. But the whispers began to rise again, caressing my ears with seductive promises, twisting my resolve. You want to save them? They taunted. But what must you lose to do so? A sharp cry sliced through the cacophony, and I looked up to see the child's visage trapped in solid shadows, her small frame reaching out to me. You cannot ignore your truth. A secret buried too deep erodes the soul. Face it, or be consumed. Nodding was a futile act. The shadows tightened their grip, dragging me toward the abyss, past the edge of rationality into something wholly authero realm where the soul could not distinguish hope from despair. Clenching my fists, I whispered to myself, a mantra against the dark, I will find the Wellkeeper. But the moment I breathed out, the impossible happened. With a lurch, the ground shuddered beneath me, and the fissure erupted. A brilliant column of light burst forth, illuminating the entire forest in a searing, blinding flash that momentarily dispelled the shadows. They howled, retreating like mist before the dawn, leaving only the sweet sound of silence. For a heartbeat, I thought I was free. My pulse quickened, heart racing, filling me with the intoxicating hope of escape. But as the light shimmered, the world slowly morphed, receding into an eldritch landscape that twisted unrecognizably. Trees bent at unnatural angles, their bark peeling away with a sickening squelch, revealing not wood, but decaying flesh. "Welcome to the true forest," the disembodied voice whispered. "Here, the past is laid bare, and shadows are mere reflections of your heart." With horror, I looked at the forest around me and understood. Every gnarled limb was a memory unable to settle, every rustle an echo of unuttered secrets. The remnants of lost souls turned to rage compounded by grief, a harrowing reality drawn from humans' unwillingness to confront harsh truths. Dread washed over me as I felt the forest itself close in. Each tree seemed linked to my life's threads, the spirit of each child whose laughter still echoed tauntingly through the branches. "Save us!" The voices chorused, a musical cacophony of despair. I stumbled further into the heart of this grotesque landscape, knowing I had no choice. I felt it clawing at my sanity, the oppressive weight of each moment spent looking away manifesting as a physical force. With every step, visions danced tantalizingly across my mind, faces I had failed, trembling hands pleading for assistance, eyes brimmed with hopes quelled. And then it struck me, a singular truth igniting amongst the rising tide of regret. This forest was a crucible, pressing me to acknowledge each wrong. Every child I had overlooked, now aligned against me as phantoms yearning for release. "What do you want from me?" I shouted, desperation lacing my voice. "We want you to be honest," they shrieked, a haunting chorus rippling through the air, sharp enough to shred the very fabric of my resolve. "Unravel your secrets. Burn them in the well, and the darkness will lift." Behind the chorus, another sound entered, a low, guttural growling, thick and primal. An enormous shadow emerged from the depths of the forest, silhouetted against the ripping light of memories brought to life. A figure cloaked in darkness and regret, beckoning with limbs that undulated like smoke, drawing closer with a predatory grace. The well-keeper approaches, the whispers thrummed with palpable dread. The ground shook with every step of that monstrous specter, the air thickening with an unmistakable sense of doom. In that moment, a fear deeper than any I had known settled in my core. I was not the seeker anymore, but the hunted. I stepped back, heart racing, dread clawing at my insides as the realization dawned what I must reveal to the well-keeper was deeper than mere regrets. What if the deepest truth shattered everything I believed I was? As I turned to flee, I crashed into something solid, that terrible weight thrusting me forward, and I fell into the chaotic thrall of the shadows. "Will you confront the well-keeper?" The voice echoed like the crack of a whip. And as I looked up, what lay before me was not just darkness but a reflection of every choice I had allowed to fester, a mirror to the corruption of my soul. And then, just as the shadows began to close in, and I felt the cold grip of despair clamping down on my throat, I noticed a glint of metal piercing the darkness from a distance. The well-keeper? Or perhaps a mere illusion created by my conditioning? Either way, the choice was slipping away from me, and I was left standing on the precipice of my past, unable to tell which direction would lead to salvation and which to ruin. The darkness roared, a cacophony of anguish surging around me, drowning out every rational thought, every voice of hope. Without knowing how, I found myself propelled toward the source of that glimmering light, drawn by an instinct deeper than my own terror. But the shadows lashed out tendrils of malice, reaching and grasping, tugging me back toward the maw of the abyss. "Face your truth," they screeched, a chorus of the damned. "Face the well-keeper and reveal the sin that binds you." The ground trembled, sending shockwaves of dread through my body. I could feel the weight of my past shaping the air around me, a tangible force demanding recognition. Memories I had locked away surged back, clawing their way to the forefront of my mind, screaming for release. The echoes of those I had failed whispered sweetly into my ears, their faces flickering before me like candle flames threatening to go out. I can't. I shouted into the storm of shadows. "Just let me go." But the shadows laughed, low and menacing, wrapping their icy fingers around my heart. "You think you can escape the truth?" A grotesque figure, resembling the children I had seen in fleeting glimpses, twisted into view. Its once sweet smile was now a haunting grimace, eyes hollow and accusatory. "You can't hide," You bring the darkness wherever you go. Their voices swirling like a vortex of regret. I steeled myself, pushing through the wall of shadows that sought to bind me. The glint of metal called to me a twisted amalgamation of spectral light and shifting shadows, but I staggered, tripping over the memories forcing their way into my consciousness. Each memory was a stone, heavy and unyielding, as they crashed against me, each a testament to my neglect. Remember the day you ignored our cries? Taunted the shadowy creature, its voice echoing through the Grovey, a chilling reminder of the decisions I made, the moments I let slip away. The forest within me felt alive, a reservoir of my failures, rising in rebellion. Summoning the last vestiges of my strength, I surged toward the light, each step a silent battle against the claws of the past. The swirling darkness tightened around my chest, squeezing my breath. You cannot face him, they shrieked as the Wellkeeper's figure began to materialize before me, a dark silhouette, cloaked in shifting shadows, eyes burning like twin flames. Who chooses to confront the abyss? The Wellkeeper intoned, voice resonating with ancient power. The forest around me trembled, the ground seeming to pulse with anticipation. You seek absolution, but there is a price. I ground my teeth, fists clenched, drowning out the whispers that begged me to turn back. Am not afraid of the price, I spat, trying to sound resolute as doubt twisted my insides. I only want to save them. Laughter echoed from the Wellkeeper, rich and spine-chilling. Save them? Or do you mean save yourself? You bury your regrets, yet you can never escape their reach. What will it take to unveil your truth? Will you give me your innocence? Will you give me the memories you cling to so desperately? Suddenly, I felt Ida ripple within the shadows around me, a sensation as if they too were feeling my fear. A wave of clarity washed over me as I realized the cost the Wellkeeper demanded wasn't just memory, as it was the very essence of who I was. My failures and regrets were interwoven into the core of my being. Your light is dim, he continued, shadows swirling around his form, the twisted visage of the children luridly writhing within. To set them free, you must let your own light extinguish, and oh, I protested, my voice trembling as despair surged furiously within my chest. I can't. I want. They need me. A waning sigh weighed heavy in the air as the shadows converged on me, wrapping tighter than ever, squeezing with desperate desperation. But is it justice they seek? Or merely a reflection of the darkness you've carried within you? And in that moment, buried memories rushed forth, tangible as the ground under my feet. The day I was too busy to listen, too complacent to act against injustice, too consumed by my own trivial matters to extend a hand. Their cries, their pleading, echoed in relentless waves. The truth was unbearable, sinking to my knees, feeling the shadows snake around my limbs like a vice. I grasped the lighted object now hovering just beyond reach, a key, shimmering with an otherworldly glow. I couldn't shake the feeling it was a fragment of the innocence I had lost. Somehow, it was the answer to my prayers, the salvation I so desperately sought, for Thema, symbol, perhaps, of what could be regained or what could be lost. Choose, the Wellkeeper commanded, voice seething like smoke. Your glimmer of hope, or embrace the darkness in full knowledge of your shame. Suddenly, the children's faces flickered before me, reflecting every moment I had abandoned them. I could hear their whispers rising like thunder. Choose wisely. Tears streamed down my face as I lifted the glowing key toward the Wellkeeper. I want to save them. I choose hope. The shadows recoiled, screeching, shrieking, howling in protest as I thrust the key forward, feeling warmth pulse through my grip. I will not let despair consume me. I will bear my truth. I will accept my darkness. In that instant, a massive rift opened beneath the Wellkeeper's piercing light, cascading into the heart of darkness, illuminating the hidden remnants of each lost child. And then it all shattered. The dark figure twisted, morphing until finally, the shadows broke apart like melting wax. I felt the key explode in my hand, and in a blinding flash, darkness swept away, silence descended in its place. I stood amidst a clearing sense of calm enveloping me, shadows now merely whispers fading into the wind. The forest around shifted, replaced by spectral children, their faces illuminated with newfound hope. But then panic surged back within me, a cold realization clawing at my heart. The well-keeper stood at the edge, hovering just beyond the light. Do you think it is finished? He mocked, the smirk returning, no longer obscured by shadows, but shining with a malevolent grin that echoed in the corners of my mind. This is but a fleeting piece. The darkness remains, ready to claim its price. That I stumbled back, chills racing down my spine, eyes locked on him. What did you do? The darkness will always return, he rasped, his voice dripping with twisted anticipation. You can never save them all, or yourself. And I understood in that chilling moment. While I had glimpsed hope, it was but a mask shielding me from a deeper truth. The hunt was never over. The souls I had touched may linger, but I would never be free of the darkness. It was part of my essence. And with that horrifying revelation, the forest whispered one final truth, a haunting reminder that would echo endlessly in the shivering night. You can't escape the hunter within.